Welcome into a new hour of CBS Sports HQ. I'm Amanda Guerra with you. The first full weekend of college football in the books. We are getting you ready for week 2. So can anybody in the nation keep up with Alabama? Also see what Brady Quinn feels about his Fighting Irish after that nail-biter of a win in overtime against FSU. So taking a look at the AP Top 10 just released a couple hours ago. Of course, he got Alabama. They're still on top. Georgia was ranked 5th. They are now up to 2nd after beating Clemson. Clemson dropping to 6th. Ohio State jumping up a spot after their win against Minnesota, and Oklahoma dropping to 4 after they barely eke out a win over Tulane. Let's welcome in our quarterbacks. We got Brady Quinn with me here on set. Danny Kanell joining us from his home. Let's dive into the games. We got Oregon at Ohio State. Ohio State favored in this one by 14.5. The over-under 63 and a hook. Brady, you actually got to be there this past weekend to watch Ohio State in person. So how do you feel about this game?
Rowdy environment, was a ton of fun. I'm sure Ohio State's going to be excited about getting back home in Columbus with 100,000 plus there to watch this big matchup. But I've got some major concerns. And when you looked at how well Minnesota was able to run the football versus that Ohio State defense with Mohamed Ibrahim, even though he's now out for the year, you should be concerned then seeing Oregon come in that also has two very capable running backs in Travis Dye and C.J. Verdell who can tote the rock, but also their quarterback, Anthony Brown, who was announced the start of this season. He's athletic. You got to factor him into the conversation, which makes things that much more difficult to stop. And mind you, Kerry Combs, the defensive coordinator, this has been an ongoing issue for a couple years at Ohio State, not making adjustments throughout the game. They lined up in a lot of post-high, man-to-man, trying to load up that box to stop the run versus Minnesota. Still didn't work. So what will be his changeup? What will be the adjustments throughout the course of the game? I don't know, but Ohio State's defense has struggled with that. So for that reason, I think Oregon can keep this one close, at least within the 14.5 points. Because, Danny, I'll tell you this much. I was a sucker for it, and I lost out on it last week with Minnesota. I thought the Buckeyes could cover. They didn't in most books. That ended up being a push. So I'm not going with them here. I'm going with the road team, Oregon, being able to keep this one within the 14.5.
Yeah, this one's tricky. It really is one of those tough games. I mean, it was 10.5 not that long ago. And then with the news of Kayvon Thibodeau possibly might not play, then all of a sudden it jumps up huge to Ohio State. I'm going to follow the money on this one. I'm going to lay the points with the Buckeyes. I thought last week played out perfectly for Ryan Day and for C.J. Stroud in particular, who had a rough go of it in the first half, so much so that all these keyboard coaches sitting at home were like, get him out of there, go to Quinn Ewers, who wasn't even at the game. That shows you how smart people are sitting on their couch. But I thought the way he was able to respond to that adversity, to step up in the second half, was massive in a road environment. Now they come at home. They come back home in the comfy confines of the shoe. Now it's Oregon's turn. They got to go on the road. For the first time, some of these guys, Anthony Brown, remember last year wasn't playing in front of a lot of crowds. Before that, he played at BC. He has not seen an environment like this one. I also think Ohio State will be able to sell out more towards the run and say, all right, because Tanner Morgan, veteran quarterback who's shown a capability of throwing 30-plus touchdowns in a year, Anthony Brown, we haven't seen it yet from him. So I think Ohio State can sell out a little bit more to shut down the run. And with that being said, I think they'll have more impact on that. I did not take the over, but I would say that's the area we agree on. I think Ohio State's going to get 40-plus easy. And if it's around the number, you get 24, something around there from Oregon, you'll push that over easy. So I'm going to take the Ohio State, lay the points, but I like the over just the same as you do.
I did hear from a birdie that Oregon's very optimistic Kayvon Thibodeau will play in this game. And that's obviously a huge game, too, just for the matchup versus an offensive line at Ohio State that they think is the best they've had in a decade. So even for talent and scout evaluators, I think he understands how important this is. But it sounds like he's going to be able to go. It's still early in the week. You never know what happens come game time. But I do think he's going to try to give it a go.
Which is great because up until this point, he was day-to-day. All right, Iowa at Iowa State. I will tell you that Don Hassel, Chris Hassel's dad, if he's watching this, not pleased that Iowa State is favored in this game by 4.5, the over-under 46. I did ask Chris what he thinks. He's taking the Hawkeyes at plus 4.5. Brady, what do you like in this game?
Am I seeing this right? It does not make sense after the two games I watched this past week. Look, Iowa State struggled to beat Northern Iowa. I mean, Breece Hall could barely rush the football. It looked like physically up front, they were having a hard time getting any sort of push. So I love Iowa getting points here when you look at the fact that they were able to run the football effectively. Their defense was absolutely nasty, airtight versus what was supposed to be a top 25 team in Indiana, getting 3 turnovers, 2 of which Riley Moss took to the house. So I love this spot because I think Iowa's going to outright win this game. I wouldn't just bet and take the points here. I'd go ahead and take the money line with the Hawkeyes.
Everybody agreeing. Danny agrees with well as Chris Hassel. All right, let's talk about Texas at Arkansas. The Longhorns favored by 6.5 on the road. Over under is 57. Both of you like the Longhorns. Danny, we got to see the beginning of the Sark era in Austin this past weekend. So why do you like the Longhorns here?
All gas, no brakes, Amanda. I believe in Sark, and what you saw were his fingerprints on this offense. Love the decision to go with Hudson Card, the younger quarterback between he and Casey Thompson. But more importantly, you saw a healthy dose of Bijan Robinson. Very workmanlike, total control of the game against Louisiana this past weekend. You had strong performances from both. Hudson Card was clean, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. You got Bijan his 100 yards plus and a touchdown in there. But for me, this was more about Arkansas. If you look at what Arkansas did this past weekend, they struggled for a half against Rice. Now, don't let the final score deceive you. Winning 38-17, they were only up, they were down 10-7 at the half. Sam Pittman was all the talk last year at Arkansas. This is still a team that does not have the talent that the Texas Longhorns do. So I think the Sark era is off to a fantastic start. This is a massive opportunity. I think that was a massive confidence booster for them. I think Sark is going to go into Fayetteville and have his way. I think Bijan Robinson will be able to have another strong game. And I think the defensive side, under defensive coordinator Pete Kwiatkowski, will continue to improve. So I'm going to go with the Longhorns here. Lay them and enjoy it.
And again, Brady agrees in that one. Guys, also on Saturday, a special game. We get Air Force at Navy, 3:30 Eastern. That one begins. It is to commemorate the 20th anniversary of September 11th. Now, when it does come to football, Air Force, the favorite on the road by 6.5. The over-under here is 41. Brady, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, no, I like Air Force in this case. Look, Navy's just been a shell of themselves. Really struggled last week versus Marshall. They couldn't sustain drives. They couldn't stop Marshall by any means. I know they're familiar with Air Force as well as the scheme, but it's going to be tough to stop that rushing attack with Hazing Daniels, who had over 120 total yards, add in some touchdowns and carries as well. Then you had Brad Roberts out of the backfield and Micah Davis, too, who pitched in. So to me, it's just too much right now with Air Force. They're a better team at this point in time of the season. I'm going to go ahead and lay the points.
I'm going to go with the Tom Fornelli of the Cover 3 podcast. I'm going to go with the Armed Forces Special. Anytime you have any of the academies line up against each other, you take the under because they run very similar offenses. They've seen each other every single year. Like typically you face a triple option team, it's they might have some success, run the ball all over. These teams both should be just kind of stopping each other left and right. I think you see a lot of drives that run a lot of time off the clock. I tell you what, though, I totally agree with Brady on what he said about Navy. This is a program that is a shell of what it was just 3 and 4 years ago. And it really started last year getting just absolutely shellacked against BYU on the national stage. And Ken Niumatalolo said, we haven't even tackled anybody. I still think this is a program that is kind of trying to figure out how to navigate COVID-19 protocols, being out in the field, and it is impacting their program. But ultimately, I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, just like they typically are when the academies get together.
Guys, hang on just a second. We are just getting started. We're going to go through top 25 teams, ranked games, recapping their picks. I do want to mention, because we do have not just Air Force at Navy, but all 3 FBS service academies playing on the CBS family to commemorate, again, the 20th anniversary of September 11th. Army hosting Western Kentucky. That is on CBS Sports Network. The one I want to point out, Brady Quinn going with Iowa, not just to cover, but to outright win that game. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at those Georgia Bulldogs getting their win against Clemson, hosting UAB this weekend. Brady and Danny on opposite sides regarding how to bet this game. I'll tell you next. Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ, going through the top 25 teams, their games this week. Right now, focusing on the SEC. Georgia, A&M, Florida, all favored by double digits. There is not a line for Mercer at Alabama. Brady pointed out in the break, just have a little bit of mercy maybe on Mercer might be the best way to do that. Let's welcome back in Brady, Quinn, Danny, Kanell. Let's go through these games. UAB at Georgia. Georgia, the big home favorite here, 25 over under 44.5. Brady, you got 2 plays in this game, and you're not sleeping on the underdog here.
No, I think there's a potential of a little backdoor cover action here. I would like the over in this one. I do think Georgia's going to score a bunch of points, but don't sleep on UAB, okay? Tyler Johnson, the quarterback, threw for over 300 yards, couple touchdowns last week, so I think he could potentially do something versus this very stingy Georgia defense that's probably going to be playing backups by the time they get some of the scoring going. But also, the UAB defense isn't necessarily a pushover. I know they're not Clemson, and we saw how Georgia struggled to do anything really versus that defense. But I do think they can hang around and stay within this number. Now, the concerning thing is it was 26. It's starting to slowly go down. Now it's at 25. I wouldn't be shocked if it didn't move down a little bit further come closer to game time. But again, this UAB defense wasn't so bad. They did hold Jacksonville State to 156 total yards last week. I mean, this was the Ohio Valley Conference winner just a year ago. So I think they're capable of hanging around in this one and making things maybe a little bit interesting for those who want to play the spread when it's all said and done. I like the over, though, better than I do the spread in this one, Danny.
All right, I would have leaned. I was kind of getting with you on the UAB as the dog pick, but I am not on the total. I'm on the opposite side of this one. I think this has hangover game written all over it for Georgia. They just had their game that everyone had circled the entire offseason. Everyone had looked at that one. It was an emotional, physical game. And in front of a crowd that's electric. Now they're going to be playing a little bit sleepier crowd. They're feeling good about themselves. They're banged up. And this is UAB's chance to shock the world. Here's the thing, though. In that type of situation, I think Georgia's defense is good enough to show up and slow down UAB and grind them to a halt. Because if Clemson had trouble scoring points, I know UAB is going to have trouble scoring points as much, even if they did have an impressive week 1 game against Jacksonville State. I also I heard all offseason long about Kirby Smart and JT Daniels' Heisman campaign and how he was going to throw the ball all over the yard. I still haven't seen it. That game wasn't exactly impressive, and Bill Clark always puts a pretty solid defensive product on the field. So I think you'll see Georgia just kind of lean on UAB, run the ball with Zamir White, get the heck out of Dodge, an ugly win, which would favor the UAB side. But I also think it'll be uglier and lower scoring because I think Georgia might not go out there and just light up UAB's defense either. So I think it's a lower scoring affair. I'm going to take the under.
Get Texas A&M and Colorado. Texas A&M now ranked 5th in the AP Top 25. Both these teams easily winning their first games. A&M is 17-point favorite on the road, over under 51. Both of you like the under in this game. Danny, the under again here. Why?
Texas A&M's defense, they're legit. I mean, they're breaking in a new quarterback in Haynes King. And the best part about it, and this is part of their first 5 games that are pretty easy for them, where I think Jimbo's kind of just figuring out his quarterback, figuring out what he likes. You'll see a lot of Isaiah Spiller running the football and some play action pass. Jimbo's not his offense in his entire career, whether it was at Florida State or at Texas A&M. He doesn't light a lot of people up. He plays slow. They're always towards the top of the ranks in time of possession. They possess the football. In Colorado, I don't see scoring many points at all. This Texas A&M defense is pretty filthy. So I think Texas A&M will be in control, but I don't like typically laying the points with the Aggies because of Jimbo Fisher's style of play. He doesn't run it up because he just doesn't open up the offense that much. But I think it's going to be a low scoring game.
Yeah, remember this, 65% of the unders hit this past week in a week 1 in college football. Now, it may take some time for markets and books to adjust, but I still think that's the safe play here for a lot of what Danny had talked about. I'm going to talk about the Colorado side of things, though. I think, look, they're playing at home. They're playing at altitude. One of the advantages that you have there, too, is to run the football. You started a freshman quarterback in Brandon Lewis who managed the game well, wasn't asked to do too much, but Jarek Broussard and the rest of the rushing attack for Colorado, they're going to try to control the game and then look for Nate Landman and that Colorado defense essentially be able to make plays, stop the run, and really put this game on Haynes King's shoulder because Jimbo Fisher is going to want to highlight his running back Isaiah Spiller in this one. So I like Colorado and the points here on this one, but again, the play is the under.
No flying high in this game for either one of you. Florida at USF, much like A&M, Florida the double-digit favorite on the road here. They're favored by 28, Danny Kanell. Over-unders 58. Do you think Florida can cover that number?
I do. I like the Gators in this one. I think it sets up perfectly. A lot of times what I'll try to look for in week 2 is you fade the teams that had really impressive wins in week one because they tend to let off the gas, get a little bit comfortable, and they don't focus as much. Florida's a little bit sloppy against Florida Atlantic, including Emory Jones. The quarterback had 2 interceptions, a little bit sloppy. I know they racked up a bunch of points in the game in total offense. They had over 500 yards of total offense. But I think you got to look at a quarterback who needs more confidence. I think Dan Mullen wants to go out and have a clean performance. But this might be, as much as it is about Florida being focused, having a good week of practice, wanting to impress, this is more about a South Florida program which is really, really struggling. They lost 45-0 against NC State. I know it was on the road, but still, NC State, one of the middle-of-the-tier ACC teams. I would expect Florida to go to USF and have their way and win big. I don't think this one will be close at all.
No, I mean, it's the same thing. Look, to Danny's point, USF is in a really bad spot right now. You know, they benched their starter last week, had to end up bringing in. Neither quarterback can really take care of the football. So they're still trying to figure out that portion of it. It's just a bad spot to be in if you're South Florida, because I think, to Danny's point too, you know, Florida wants to try to make sure Emory Jones looks to be the guy. There's a lot of things they need to improve upon. This is the game that they're going to try to do it. So I think it's a safe play to lay the points here.
Hang on just a second. I want to recap your picks really quickly before we keep moving forward here. Got a lot more games to go through here. UAB at Georgia. Now they're on opposite sides. When it comes to the total, Brady also thinks UAB can cover against the Bulldogs there. They both like the under in A&M at Colorado. And Danny laying the points with the Gators at South Florida. Coming up here on CBS Sports HQ, we're going to jump from the SEC to ranked Big Ten games. Can the defending MAC champs try to keep it close against Penn State? Week 2 college football, getting you ready here, taking a look at Big Ten games we can look forward to. We got the defending MAC champs at Penn State, and then Eastern Michigan at Wisconsin. Wisconsin falling to Penn State in its season opener. Now Badgers head coach saying, look, that was a winnable game. We should have won it. We should do better. So welcome back, Brady, Quinn, Danny, Kanell. Let's start with Ball State at number 11, Penn State. Penn State taking care of business against Wisconsin this past weekend. This will be their home opener, so we know it's going to be a great scene there. Huge favorite at home, 22 over under 55 and a hook. Brady, what's your play in this one?
Yeah, this is a bad spot to be in if you're Ball State.
Not great.
I think Penn State played really sloppy. There wasn't much going on there in the first half of last week's game at Camp Randall in Wisconsin, but rightfully so. Wisconsin's got a good defense, and their third offensive coordinator in 3 years, Mike Yurcich, is still trying to find his rhythm and flow. We started to see that coming out of halftime and really in the second half for Sean Clifford, connecting with Jahan Dotson, and they started to pick up the tempo, spread some things out. And I think you're going to see a fair amount of that. Ball State last week gave up a lot of big plays and yards too. And even though I do think Drew Plitt, their quarterback, might be able to hang in this one a little bit, he's going to be challenged by that secondary for Penn State. So I really like in this one, Penn State, you lay the points here, and I actually like the over. I think there should be a fair amount of scoring, especially from Penn State in this one, Danny.
I'm with you on the same side with Penn State. I'd lay the points. You know, it was interesting. Amanda was talking about Wisconsin's coaches saying, we should have won that game. Yeah, but you also could have given up about 2 more touchdowns had Sean Clifford connected on a couple wide open wide receivers down the field. That to me is where you see Penn State, the opportunity here, where I do think they get right. That was an environment, tough place to play. It's hard to communicate. Now you come back at home, you'll feel more comfortable. There's not quite as much pressure on Sean Clifford. And I would hope that it wasn't a great game, but it was a confidence building game. And I think every time he takes the field and it's not a pressure packed situation, playing against the defense in Jim Leonard, who's going to throw a lot of blitzes at you, you're facing a lot of pressure. I think he'll have better protection. He'll trust that protection. And some of those big plays that are out there, I think he'll connect on. So I'm going to take Penn State and lay the points.
So on the other side of that, we have Wisconsin coming off that loss to Penn State. Let's talk about them hosting Eastern Michigan. They're a big favorite here, 25.5, over under 52. Danny, I believe you like the under here. Tell us why.
Because I hate Wisconsin's offense. They made me look like an idiot, Amanda. That's why. It was so bad. I was so wrong about this team. I hope I'm wrong. I don't like just bagging on these guys. But I thought Graham Mertz was going to have a monster year. I thought he's the most talented quarterback I've seen at Wisconsin since Russell Wilson. And that offense just puttered around, could not get anything going. Now, granted, it's Penn State's defense. They're pretty much a different story. But I still think they're going to want to go back at kind of what they've always done, run the football, control the line of scrimmage, some play action pass. I keep hearing about a new look Wisconsin offense, but until I see it, I'm taking the under time every time they play.
Danny, I'm right there with you. I'm taking the under here, and it's important, I think, what we saw from Wisconsin's offense last week, but also because I don't think Eastern Michigan's going to score that much versus this Wisconsin's defense. They're extremely salty. And we've said it a number of times now so far today. You're right. Wisconsin should have won if not for their own mistakes. Now, I will say this in regards to their offense. I think the thing that frustrates me the most, and Paul Chris took over play calling duties, so it's on his shoulders, is the fact that nothing mirrors one another. You know, we know they want to run the football. I get that. But if you're going to have a pass play other than just a boot off of it, have a move the pocket pass, some screens, some play action shots, maybe even mix up a little bit, a little more spread formations or empty sets, even with base personnel with running backs and tight ends to at least spread out the defense and give Graham Mertz easier completions, in particular on early downs. It was extremely frustrating watching them making football seem harder than it is in 2021, in particular in the passing game. All that being said, I think they get back right. I think they get back on track in this one. I'm laying the points with Wisconsin, but I'm also with Danny on the under.
Guys, we're going to jump from the Big Ten to the Pac-12. I'm going to take a little swallow there. Okay, recapping the Big Ten picks here. They both like Penn State there. It's going to be a rowdy scene. Their home opener there. Both like the under in Eastern Michigan at Wisconsin. Brady also laying the points with Wisconsin in that game. So jumping from the Big Ten to the Pac-12, both BYU, Utah picking up a win in their first games of the season. My voice is a little shoddy. Brady, you love my stats. Utah has started each of their seasons 2-0 since 2013, except one of them, so keep that in mind as we move forward. Stanford, USC winning 8 of its last 9 Pac-12 games. Let's start with Utah at BYU. Utah, 7-point favorite on the road here, over under 48. Danny, we'll start with you.
I'm going with the Utes, baby. I know Brady and I are on different sides of the coin there. The Pac-12 North was a disaster, but the Pac-12 South, 4 ranked teams in the top 25, Utah being one of them after an opening win this past weekend. But they've got a quarterback now in Charlie Brewer who has over 10,000 career yards under his belt. Very experienced quarterback. They added with that, as you would expect from a Utah squad, another running back in Thomas who had over 100 yards this past weekend. And while I look at BYU, their win over Arizona wasn't exactly confidence-inspiring in me. Arizona, I think, is going to be one of the worst teams, not only in the Pac-12, but in the country. And BYU eked out a win against them. So I'm going to say Utah goes out there and has their way in the rivalry game and wins and covers.
You know, Danny, I actually like the under, especially between whether both these two teams play, more so than I do the spread. But I'm going to go ahead and take the 7 points in this one apart because I think it's going to be close. I think it might very well come down to a field goal, even if Utah win. That obviously still covers for BYU. But I've seen enough so far from Jaron Hall. I think he's very capable. We saw that a little bit versus Arizona and being able to help them pull away as far as the passing attack. So I'm on that side of it. The concern for me isn't even so much defense, it's special teams. I think you saw a number of times the special teams of Arizona got the best of BYU. So that's that third factor that Kyle Whittingham teams seem to be so good at and were a concern, at least in week 1 for BYU. But again, I'm on the side of the Cougars here. I think their defense was up for the task a number of times, in particular in the red zone, and that's going to be the difference where they keep this one close. So I'll take BYU in the points, but the play here to me is the under.
We also have Stanford at USC. USC holding San Jose State scoreless. The first half this past weekend, they went ahead and won that one 30-7. USC favored in this one by 17. The over-under 51 in a hook. Brady, how will the Trojans fare in this particular game?
You know, we talked about Navy earlier being a team that's kind of been at least on the decline. Stanford's been that way too. It's crazy to see what's happened to David Shaw's program. And I don't know if that's a byproduct of what they've gone through really the past year and change with COVID and some of the different regulations they're subject to as opposed to other teams. But the reality is this is a tough spot for Stanford. I think USC is the play. Lay the points here. I also like the over in this one, but there's still some concerns. I mean, USC had a hard time pulling away from San Jose State. I know the score at the end of the day, it looked like they did, but it really took a big fourth quarter for them to get to that point. But you're not going to be able to see Stanford match up with Drake London. He's the best wide receiver on the field. This defense for USC was able to put some pressure on at times versus San Jose State. I mean, Nick Starkel was playing like a completely different player than what we're accustomed to seeing. So the passing attack, maybe sprinkling a little bit of a running game too from time to time, and this USC defense being stingy. and getting some turnovers when Stanford does decide to throw it will be key here. But USC in the points, and again, the over.
I'm going to go ahead and just take USC and lay the points. I just think Stanford, and Brady alluded to it, I think they lost a year of development last year. It just was, they had, they were on the road half the season. They had to pack up. They didn't even get to use their own facilities for the majority of the season. They've just had a lot of restrictions that a lot of teams in the country and some even in the conference didn't have to deal with. And I saw it unfold against Kansas State in week 1. Plus, their quarterback, Davis Mills, left last year, kind of left them where they thought they had slotted another year. Davis Mills, surprisingly, he went. So now they're kind of playing with somebody younger that they're developing that I don't think they saw happening. And with USC, I thought USC, they did score 2 touchdowns late in the fourth quarter, but I thought that was a really, really tricky spot for the Trojans to be in. San Jose State, Mountain West champions last year. Nick Starkel, 6-year senior, comes in. Like, that was a dangerous spot where you just want to get out of Dodge. They did that, and they won the game. But to me, you lay the points because USC playing for a lot this season, now you saw UCLA, them across town, beat LSU. And this is more to me, though, about Stanford just really needs to do a little bit of soul searching and figure out where this program is. And even if they, which I love David Shaw, I think he'll figure it out, but I think it's going to take quite some time before they're competitive with some of these other Pac-12 opponents.
I think one of the biggest issue, too, is you've seen through COVID, certain schools have a commitment to football and wanting to put forth the resources and ensure that those players get what they need and prepare them to be able to play, execute, and win football games. Stanford's a different institution. They when you look at what their stadium looks like with the crowd and so forth, there's not as much of a football culture there, at least kind of pushing them, rooting them on, though. So that seems to be one of the issues that I think you're having there, too, is through all of the adversity that I think we've been through the past couple of seasons, I don't know that that's their top priority, like it is in Tuscaloosa, like it is for Clemson or Ohio State, some of these other schools who are more about football, maybe so much, a little bit more so sometimes than academics.
Danny, I want to talk to you about this next one here. We got UNLV at Arizona State. So Arizona State has rushed for 6+ touchdowns, Danny, and 3 straight games. They're the big favorite, 32.5, over under 55.5. So why are you scared of the over here, Danny? You're going with the under.
Because I don't know if UNLV is going to score. UNLV is not a very good football team right now. And the one thing that bothers me about this, I wouldn't be afraid to lay the points. If I was going to take a side, I would take Arizona State. But I think they'll be able, you alluded to the run game, I think they'll be able to control the clock while they're moving it down the field. I mean, they had a slew of running backs get carries their week 1 win against Southern Utah. I think this Arizona State program is too. Because of all the NCAA investigation that's coming around, they have 3 assistants on paid leave. I think a lot of people just kind of wrote them off. I think this is a team that could really surprise in the Pac-12. I mean, especially of a mindset of it's us against the world, like no one's giving us any credit. I think they love Herm Edwards. I think they respond to Herm Edwards. And I think they have a really talented quarterback in Jaden Daniels. And I think this roster is really talented on both sides of the ball. So I think it's a dominant win, but I don't think UNLV scores many points at all against Arizona State. So that's why I'm on the under.
See, I actually like the spread here better than I do the over-under, but I'm going to differ with you in that regard. I think UNLV might score a little bit, but it's going to be more so about Arizona State and all the scoring I think they're going to do in this one. But my advice is lay the points with Arizona State. I mean, look, the bottom line is this defense was stingy last week versus Southern Utah, got 4 turnovers. We know Arizona State can run the football, rush for about 230 yards. It's the passing game that's more of a concern. And this is the game where I think Jaden Daniels gets things back on track, assuming he doesn't leave the third quarter with cramps like he did a week ago. So he's got to hydrate. That's going to be the biggest thing, I think, moving forward. But the other thing about this Arizona State team is they just need to clean up the penalties. 13 penalties for over 130 yards, extremely undisciplined. That was an issue. Special teams were a big-time issue for this team. So it really could have been worse last week if not for some of their own self-inflicted wounds. That's why I love Arizona State and laying the points here versus UNLV.
Guys, we have one more group of games to go through, but I want to recap these before we get to those. They are on opposite sides when it comes to Utah, BYU. They're both like USC. Danny taking the under UNLV at Arizona State. Doesn't think UNLV will score much at all. Brady going to over, but does say he prefers the spread there. Coming up, we got North Carolina clinging to a top 25 spot after falling to Virginia Tech over the weekend. They're a big favorite hosting Georgia State. Can they cover? Danny Kanell says no. We'll tell you why next. Welcome back. We are taking a look at the last group of games here. Middle Tennessee going up against Virginia Tech. That was a fun Virginia Tech game. Big home favorites there again, 19 points. App State going against Miami. Miami dropping to 22. They were ranked 14th, but of course losing big time to Alabama. Then we got Georgia State going up against North Carolina. North Carolina looking for the bounce back after losing to Virginia Tech over the weekend. Welcome back, Brady, Quinn, Danny, Kanell. Let's start with Georgia State at North Carolina. North Carolina, big home favorite this time, 25.5 over under here, 64. Brady got 2 plays in this game. What are they?
Yeah, it's going to be lay the points with UNC and the over in this one. Look, North Carolina's going to come back with a vengeance after a really poor performance versus Virginia Tech last week. Bottom line is they're lucky to be ranked in the top 25. I wouldn't have put them in the top 25 if we're being honest with ourselves, at least not at this point, given the way that they lost, the way their entire team looked. But this Georgia State team struggled last week versus Army. I do think Sam Howell will have his way. And yes, he's limited with some of the weapons they have, but he at least has one guy in Josh Downs who I know is going to step up and make plays for him. So I feel confident in laying the points. I think UNC gets back on track and they start to actually warrant the ranking that they've got right now, still inside the top 25.
All right, Amanda, I'm being emotional because I did it with Wisconsin. I'm doing it in North Carolina. I feel like I was wrong on North Carolina, so I'm a little bit irritated that they didn't make me look good. I just have a bad feeling about this spot from Mac Brown's squad. Like that they might, we see teams get beat twice often, after losing to Alabama. Miami's another team. I'm kind of worried about their game this weekend. But with North Carolina, I'm curious where they are mentally. They had built up this entire offseason. Can they knock off Clemson? Are they the second best team in the ACC? And I know a lot of their goals are still right there, and they still could be. But that was a gutting loss for that program. So I'm curious where they are mentally right now in a bounce back scenario. I saw an offensive line that was supposed to be veteran struggle to protect Sam Howell. Now, I don't think Georgia State by any means is showing up with the defense that Virginia Tech did. I just wonder if this will be a lethargic, kind of feeling sorry for yourself North Carolina team that maybe it's sluggish in the first half. Again, they played in front of an electric environment in Blacksburg. Enter Sandman, one of the scenes of the weekend. I would not anticipate being the case in Chapel Hill yet. They'll get there later in the season. But for this one, I'm worried about a disappointing performance from North Carolina. I hope Brady's right because I love Mac Brown. I love the program. But I'm worried about this program, where they are mentally right now.
Georgia, UNC going from 10th to 24th. Danny, look, I like it. Brady's all business. I'm an emotional person. I make bets based on emotion.
Not an emotional guy.
So it's cool.
Not emotional.
Look at this. He's just like a suit of armor over here.
Like a robot.
We got Middle Tennessee at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech favored by 19, over under 54. Danny, you like the Hokies yet again?
Yeah, where's the emotion here, Danny?
Yes, I want to see the emotion.
Well, I'm going to go with them, man. They showed me what they got. I tell you what, Braxton Burmeister wasn't, lighting North Carolina's defense up by any means, but he just kind of did enough where he showed you a gritty performance. But this, to me, is about the Virginia Tech defense, which was getting after Sam Howell, which did shut down their run game, which was going out there, flying around the football. This kind of felt like the Virginia Tech team that we saw out there a decade ago, when Bud Foster was the defensive coordinator and they were bringing out the lunch pail. So for me, and also Middle Tennessee is a program that is really struggling kind of the last couple years, kind of find their way. They haven't been very successful. I think the Hokies, too, have to carry the water for the ACC in this weekend where there are some tricky games against non-conference opponents. I think Virginia Tech could be one of those upside surprises for the ACC this season. So I think they'll roll this weekend. I'm
with you. I mean, you saw this a little bit last year from Virginia Tech, just the way they're able to run the football, and maybe not so much from Braxton Burmeister, who obviously led them in rushing and threw a couple dimes down there. But this offensive philosophy is essentially run the football and take shots. I love it. I think it's going to be effective versus Middle Tennessee. And I think you lay the points with Virginia Tech here because Virginia Tech is going to be able to shut out Middle Tennessee. I don't think they're going to score many points here. So if you've got 2 plays, you lay the points, you take the under as well. I feel pretty safe in that particular bet given the style of play from Virginia Tech.
You get App State at Miami, and Miami falling from 14th to 22nd after that loss to Alabama. So Miami's favored by 8 in this one, over under 53.5. Now, both of you think App State can cover. So Brady, tell us why. How much has to do with Miami and how much has to do with App State?
It's 50-50. It's both. I mean, I think you worry about Alabama beating Miami twice. It was a physical battle, physical matchup. and that's going to linger into this week. And you've got an Appalachian State team that's coming in with Chase Bryce, who's a very capable quarterback, who's going to be licking his chops watching those big plays that Alabama created. So I'm not saying App State's going to pull off the upset, but I do think they're going to be able to keep it close. I do think they can strike some big plays on this Manny Diaz defense that really struggled to limit that versus Alabama. And some of it's personnel, some of it's just schematic too. So I think the play here is you lay the 8 points, or excuse me, you take the 8 points and App State as the underdog. And I also think it could potentially be a low-scoring game in this one. But I like the spread more so with App State and the points than I do the over-under.
It's a dangerous spot. I'm telling you, Miami's first 3 games are really tricky. Obviously, we know about Alabama. They play Michigan State next week, which is going to be a tricky Big Ten matchup. But I'm almost along the same lines as Brady. When you look at this matchup, the Sun Belt's pretty good too, especially the top tier, of which App State would be there. Perennial 9-10 win team. They've been the Sun Belt champion a couple times in recent history. This is their Super Bowl too. Miami's going to be playing. I mean, trust me, I know the Miami fan base. No, they're not going to be exactly electric out there this weekend, especially considering they lost to Alabama. So I'm very curious to see. And also, like, don't forget, I'm worried that last year was an anomaly, an outlier for the Hurricanes. The year before that, they were 7-6 and they had 3 losses to Conference USA opponents. Like, this isn't like a program that you can exactly trust yet. They've got to show to me that they have the maturity to be able to handle a loss like they did, to be able to bounce back and get ready right away. That's also a physical, taxing game. When you get beat down the way they did against the Tide, that one's going to take its toll. So I need to see the Miami Hurricanes bounce back before I'm going to take those points. So I'm going to take App State in the points. One
thing we know for sure too, Dan, and you could probably agree on this, is those Miami fans, they're front runners. So after a loss like that, you know they're not going to be showing up in South Florida for this game.
You're just gonna keep
no doubt about it. They showed more fight in the stands, unfortunately, with some of the videos you saw than the team did in the second half. And I didn't like the mindset either. A couple times, Manny Diaz going for field goals when you're down 4 touchdowns, like just to get some points on the board. I don't know. I'm very skeptical right now. And I thought there was a little bit of desperation on Manny Diaz's part of taking over those defensive play calling duties this offseason to say, hey, I want to be in control of this team. Don't forget, again, another game last year against North Carolina, they got rolled over 500 rushing yards. I don't know if this team is very physical, and they better be ready for a team in App State who's going to try to get physical with the Power 5 team. The group of 5 teams always come in with a chip on their shoulder.
Got Toledo at Notre Dame. Brady, after that last game, it ended after midnight Eastern time, right?
Late.
Were you able to go to sleep pretty quickly after? Were you pretty hyped up?
No, I was working here.
I know that, but I mean after that, yes, he did do an HQ hit after. All right, here's the thing. You took Notre Dame to cover in that game.
I did.
It didn't quite work out.
We'll
see about this one here. They're favored by 16.5, over under 53. How do you feel about your Fighting Irish?
Well, I like the spread better than I do the over-under in this one, but I would lay the 16.5 points. I think one of the things that we saw is clearly the passing attack is going to be much different than what we saw a year ago. We know Michael Mayer, the tight end, he's going to be up for the Mackey if he doesn't win it this year. In my opinion, he's the best in the country. But it was the emergence of Kevin Austin, Joe Wilkins, those guys making plays downfield, Braden Lindsey as well, and Jack Cohn being able to distribute the football, and offensive coordinator Tommy Rees spreading the field more. This is not the offense that we saw a year ago, where if it's 3rd and 1, they're going to look at just running the football and getting the first down. No, they're going for the jugular. They're going to throw a touchdown pass to Michael Mayer. They're going to sling it and take a shot versus press man-to-man coverage to Joe Wilkins or Kevin Austin. It's a different feel to all this. Now, the concern is Toledo can put up some points. And the way that defense played in the second half, up 18 points with a 3-down front and a light box, just allowed Florida State to walk right back in the game. There's a lot of pressure right now on defensive coordinator Marcus Freeman to shore up that defense, not allow as many big plays, and for that defense to be able to make tackles. But thank God for safety Kyle Hamilton, because without him, I don't know where the Irish would have ended up in that game.
Yeah, he had some unbelievable plays in that one. And Amanda, you are right. Thank you for pointing out that Florida State covered in that one, which did get me a nice dinner with the wives out. I need to find the most expensive restaurant I can find, because that game still gutted me as a Florida State guy. What a performance. I'm hoping that Florida State's good, and that means that Notre Dame is even better. And I think Brady's been pointing this out all offseason. I was a little bit skeptical of our guy, saying, man, he's a little bit of a homer here, but he was spot on. You actually have some weapons to work down the field with at Notre Dame now. Tommy Rees called a masterful game, including, one of the 3rd and long calls, Florida State blitzes. You could not have asked for a better play call than a screen, dumps it over the top, a back-breaking conversion for the Irish in that one. But the emergence of Jack Cohn, who looked way more comfortable throwing the ball vertically down the field than Ian Book did last year, who was a really good college quarterback. And Jack Cohn, we thought, game manager, he's going to check it down. For him to show the emergence of that ability to throw down the field, that to me says watch out for Notre Dame, not only in this game to lay the points. I think you'll see that offense continue to flourish, but even potentially as somebody who could, once again, we always forget about him because they're independent. We always do conference champion picks. We never really look at Notre Dame and say, who's the best independent? I think people were sleeping on Notre Dame again, and Brian Kelly has proved year after year he delivers a winner more times than most. They got a chance to scare the playoff yet again.
I think the one concern I have moving forward, too, is just that offensive line. Left tackle Blake Fisher had an injury. I don't know when he will be back, but Michael Carberry actually came in and maybe did an even better job versus that Florida State front. But the offensive line in general still gelling together. They had a hard time running the football. That was the bread and butter last year. Will that improve, or are they going to have to rely on the arm of Jack Cohn and the playmakers on the outside for the rest of the season? It starts with those improvements versus Toledo.
Last game, we're going to look at Kansas at Coastal Carolina. Coastal here, 25.5-point favorite, over under 52. Danny, what's your play in this game?
So, Amanda, this is the game of the weekend, right? Do you know Kansas's win total? Kansas's win total on the season was 1.5. So they got 1. All they need is 1 more to push all those over-bettors over the top. And, man, I'll tell you what, a win over South Dakota, not South Dakota State. Those would be the Jackrabbits, who are a little bit better than South Dakota. Fans rushed the field. They stormed the field in Lawrence because they got a win for Lance Leipold. This is a team, they're 0-2 the last 2 years against Coastal Carolina. The 2 years ago, it was 12-7. Last year, they got beat by 13. I still think they can hang around enough, show some fight. The win this week 1 was enormous, even though I know I'm very facetious in the quality of the win. But I do think it was big for Kansas to at least get the W. I think they show some fight. I think they hang around for a half. 25 is a big number for a Group of 5 program, so I'm not going there just yet. I'm going to take Kansas and the points.
I love this bet. I think for the same reasons Danny talked about, but also because I believe in Jason Bean, the North Texas transfer in there at quarterback. I think he gives them a shot. Coastal Carolina likes to bring a lot of pressure, so if they can complete some passes behind that pressure, create some big plays, Kansas can keep this.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.